in a straight direction. As we get more involved in our studies, as we get more educated, we eventually reach a point where we start branching out to other disciplines, or we pursue even further down a straight course. What a tool like Wikipedia allows us to do, however, is to start anywhere we want in the world of knowledge and start telling a story and letting it take us in any direction that we want to go. You could start with, you could take the whole story and say, and imagine that it's an answer to the question, what connects the Taiping Rebellion with the discovery of the world's first artificial dog? Well, that's a story, that's a question that has an answer. It probably has more than one. It probably has a dozen. But that's the kind of question which encourages people to do exactly what I'm talking about, to make their own novel connections through the world of ideas and knowledge. It's a question that would be very difficult to answer without a tool like Wikipedia or Knowledge Web. You couldn't necessarily do it with an Encyclopedia Britannica or Bill Bryson's Short History of Nearly Everything. Now, I always wondered why Wikipedia had this ability and what made it so unique. And not just the wiki functionality, but there's something else inherent in it, and it's this idea of concept and elaboration, which is the cue card concept. And you have your little cue cards there. Which is at the title, you have, at the beginning, you have a concept or an idea, and then you have a brief elaboration. Now that's what Wikipedia is. The elaborations tend to be quite detailed. But in the world, if you imagine the world of ideas as a giant distributed network of facts. Now it's more than that, obviously, but if you imagine it just that way, as a giant network, distributed network of facts, the elaboration is all the connections that those facts make to others. Now, when you read a textbook, or you're taught in a traditional textbook manner, what you're getting is you're getting a very straightforward linear progression of concepts and ideas. You're getting a straight line through that distributed network. And it's a very predictable line. It's also the most efficient way to scaffold ideas, and there's a reason that we use that. But when we reach a certain point where we've mastered the basics, and it's time to start looking for novel connections and actually making our own discoveries, we find that this pattern that's been ingrained in us for years and years and years of creating these straight line, these linear paths through the network of knowledge and ideas actually becomes a hindrance. Not because we're forced to do it anymore. We're not. Anyone can make any connection between ideas that they want to. But the habits become ingrained in us of using that linear path, that linear way of thinking. And so we actually need, at some point, a little bit of training in how to break that, a little bit of training in connecting things that don't necessarily seem like they're obviously connected. And one way to do that doesn't necessarily involve Wikipedia, involves the cue cards. And it's called a cue card concept map. And it's an idea that I pioneered when I was doing my studies in education, which is rather than presenting information as you would in a book with chapter after chapter or heading after heading. I mean, everyone's seen a textbook, right? You've got in big, bold, blue letters, you've got the concept you're learning here, industrialization, okay, and then militarism, okay. And you've got concept, elaboration, concept, elaboration, concept, elaboration. If you're reading the book right through, you're getting them in that predetermined order every time. But what we actually have the power to do with things like cue cards, or a smaller version of Wikipedia, or anything like that, any kind of wiki functionality, you can even do it with pen and paper, you don't need the internet, is you can present all of these tidbits, all of these different concepts, even the ones that depend on others, in a completely random way. You can present all of them at once, and then give students, either individually or in groups, the task of putting them together in a way that tells a story. Putting them together in a way that makes sense. And the beautiful thing about this is that there isn't one right way to do it. I mean, you have a bunch of different ideas and concepts on here. Some of them are places. Some of them are people. Some of them are events. Some of them are just abstract concepts or ideologies. Now, you can categorize them that way. You could categorize them according to when they were. You could categorize them according to what type of concept or what type of factoid they are. You could categorize them in a linear form in terms of a timeline, which is one of the simplest things that you could do to train students to do this. That'd be a simple idea. Or you could have one in time and space. You could have one in terms of economic changes or social changes. There's a million different ways that you could do this. But the best part is simply taking a stack of them, throwing them on a big table with a bunch of people and seeing what they come up with, seeing what connections they make, and observing them as they negotiate those interactions and say, how do we connect these ideas? Do you put this one next to this one? Do we put this one under this one? Do we put this one beside this one? And the fewer rules there are, the more potential there is for actual creative discovery, for actual new connections to be made. And in the few experiments I've done with this in classrooms, I've found that you get absolutely remarkable results. And I've done the same thing with Wikipedia too. In some ways it's easier to do with Wikipedia because they can more easily find things that interest them. You're not restricted to a specific subject or curriculum. You can actually be transdisciplinary. And so you can start with, for example, simply asking students what connects this particular mathematic equation with the sport of rugby. And then let them on the computers and see what they come up with. And I mean, a lot of them will take the easy route. They'll simply click on links, idea to idea to idea, seeming to try to aim in the general direction until they get there. Or maybe they'll explore and read along the way as they go. That's not so much important. What's important is that they're starting with one idea and an end destination that seems completely unconnected. And then they're forced to navigate through the world of knowledge and ideas to get to that end point. And they don't necessarily know what they're going to encounter along the way. They might reach a dead end when they thought they were getting somewhere. They might discover something completely new. They might discover something that they never knew they'd have an interest in, but now that they realize they do. Anyways, when it comes to interdisciplinary thinking, when it comes to breaking down the walls between disciplines, which is something we need to do if we're going to, because that's the way the world works. Invention and discovery and innovation aren't about taking the next logical step down a linear progression, a linear field. Sometimes they are, but not usually. Usually what it's about is taking a bunch of bits and pieces from all over the place that don't necessarily seem to have any obvious connection and putting them together in a new way. That's how the television was invented. It's how so many things were invented. And it's also how you tell a story, is taking little bits and pieces and putting them together in the way that you choose, in a new way that no one's done it before. And we can't necessarily break down the walls between classrooms, break down the walls between disciplines yet, but we do have the power to break the books off the covers and put all knowledge in one giant, accessible, overlapping, interactive web. And it's something that we're not necessarily taking as much advantage as we should have in our classrooms right now, and it's something that we absolutely can, and I think eventually will use to transform education.
Yay!
Everybody clap.
Play a game with the things?
Yeah, super exciting.
All mine have to do with popes. I got 3 pope cards.
Mine have to do
Well, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to grab a couple tables.